All right, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to this virtual session on TradeTech for inclusive and sustainable trade. I'm very excited to be here. My name is David Fan. I'm the head of digital trade at the World Economic Forum, and I'm your moderator today. So very exciting panel today. Thank you for joining. I see we have over 100 programs at the WTO Public Forum this year, and I'm very glad you're here to listen to our panel. This very important topic, and I consider this as the panel where technology meets trade. So technology is not new to global trade, and in fact, it has always been the engine that drives international trade. If you think about, centuries ago, the invention of compass, right, ushered in the new age of navigation and trade, to recently the containers, right, containerization that really made globalization a reality. Now, although in the past 10 years or so, the wave of digital technologies, right, that have enabled the flow of goods and services across the world. However, what's different in this age, in the age of fourth industrial revolution, is that the speed, scope, and scale of those technology developments far outpace the policies and governments. There's a gap in between. We are still talking about e-commerce now in the AI age, right? So so to address that gap, a group of us started this project called TradeTech, just like a FinTech or GovTech, TradeTech. By the way, it's a hashtag, so we highly encourage you to use it on social media. For today's session, we're trying to get it trending. I think more people need to get in this field of TradeTech. So yeah, so a couple of years ago, the forum, we got a group of multi-stakeholder folks in multi-stakeholder fashion to tackle this challenge of TradeTech. Last year, we published this comprehensive report for the mapping TradeTech on this topic. And this year, we're very, very excited that we are starting earlier this year, 2021. We're officially partnering up with the WTO to do a deep dive on how digital technologies are transforming global trade, and particularly the implications on trade policies. We would like to thank Emmanuel Gum from the WTO for her leadership. She is an expert in this field, author of several reports on blockchain, and no stranger to many of you here. So we're very excited for that. So bring it back to where we are today. I think it's important to take a step back and look at the entire picture, right? How are digital technologies helping us to achieve inclusive and sustainable trade? Let's take out the hype and really focus on the real opportunities and also challenges and solutions here. To help us to achieve this goal, we were able to assemble a group of amazing experts, the TradeTech Avengers here and from all over the world to discuss this topic. No PowerPoint today. I really just an open discussion on this. So let me introduce them. First, we have Deepak Sharma, who is the Director of Business Solutions at Agility. Welcome, Deepak.
Thank you.
We have Christian Lang, who is the CEO of TradeShift. Welcome, Christian. He's usually based in San Francisco as I am, but I think today he's in London, so better time zone. Ms. Eva Schubert, who is the CEO of Dory. By the way, I always wonder what Dory means. Has anything to do with Doraemon? But we can talk about that
later. That's secret.
And last but definitely not least, we have Mr. Sin-Yong Lo, who is the Director of Trade from the Infocom Media Development Authority, IMDA, of Singapore. It's late on your side, so thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Lo. All right, so we will jump right into it. It's been quite a year and a half. Lots to talk about. Digital technologies have accelerated us at least 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatnot. But the fact is that digital technology have kept global trade flowing, whether it's goods or services. So what are some real opportunities here? I'd love to hear some your thoughts and examples. So we'll start with Deepak, please.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, as all of us know, the pandemic really changed everything. And all of us know logistics or supply chain is an industry that's one of the oldest, and therefore has always been very manual in nature. Lots of paper, lots of people moving goods from point A to point B. And with globalization, it has become more and more complex. In the past 100 years ago, things are produced in the same country and consumed in the same country. Today, we have things being produced in multiple locations. All of them come into one location, and then they get assembled and then go to another location where they get sold. So it's really become a very complex process compared to what it used to be. And it still remained manual and manually intensive over all these years. Digitization or technologies slowly started coming in. Like within Agility, or 15 years ago, we implemented our record management system so that we could have digital paper versus manual. So those things started coming in, but at a very slow pace. And the biggest challenge, one of the biggest challenges was to have the people on the ground accept it, because they're so used to doing things in a certain way. It's a paradigm shift to move from, let's say, physical paper to digital paper. So the pandemic definitely helped us in that sense. It's a wrong thing to say in some ways, they helped us, but it motivated people to actually accept digitization. So it is, in the last 2 years at least, I have seen more digitization happen versus the last 10 years. And the best part is that the existing technology itself, like simple things like mobile phones, have played an instrumental role in actually making it happen. Like, I'll just give one example. In Agility, we introduced an app called Agility Delivers that allows our delivery agents to pick up and deliver goods without the need of any paper, and to even make it contactless. They can deliver it and walk away. And the customer knows that who has come, who has delivered it, and so on. So it has definitely helped. It has reduced the amount of time it takes to do a lot of things. It has improved the overall process. It has made customers get their information faster versus waiting for some piece of paper to show up at in their offices. So yeah, so I won't take too much time, but basically it has definitely made a huge difference, and it continues to make a difference. I would say the best is yet to come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepak. I know we had a previous conversation on this topic, so I'd love to hear more from you, especially on the specific examples. So thank you. Next, we'll move to Christian. You're no stranger to this topic. We've been talking about TradeTech for a couple of years now. I feel like the time has finally arrived. So over to you, Christian.
Yeah, I think, TradeTech, we're 11 years old. We're a cloud computing company who provide some of the largest companies in the world with platforms to run the transactions in the supply chain. So we have a very, I would say, unique picture into what's moving around the world. We move more than $450 billion of trade these days. And in fact, we just, I think, hit $1 trillion accumulated over this summer. And one thing that we really have been observing during the pandemic is there's been a massive acceleration and uptake in digital technologies and supply chain. This is an area that has a lot of legacy. In a way, you can say what's been hurting what I would say modern trade tech is actually that we started so early. A lot of companies started 50 years ago with EDI, and these technologies are hard to replace. They're painful to replace. But what we're seeing over the last 18 months is just a massive amount of investments and movement away from what I would say legacy processes. I mean, when we started out, fax was still one of the most common ways of delivering purchase orders in many industries. We almost don't see that anymore today. It's really ramping down very quickly. So I think it's driven by two things, right? A lot of companies have seen this as an opportunity to push the supplier base harder to switch, but also for the supplier base, there's been far more anxiety around getting paid. And that means that a lot of suppliers has also been more willing to change and adapt new technologies, just because in an uncertain market, the risk of not getting paid means that the the threshold for switching is just lower than it has been.
Great. All right, thank you so much for the overview, Christian. Definitely get back to you on more of that. We'll move to Eva. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, at the risk of being repetitive, I think I just identify a lot with what Christian and Deepak are saying. The pressures of the pandemic have brought home, one of the messages at the heart of TradeTech, and that's that better tools give us more options. And changing tools is hard, either because you've got systems that are 30 years old and written in COBOL, or because you've got a guy in a loading bay who wants his piece of paper. There are behavioral issues, there are technology issues that stand in the way of adoption, but we've got a lot of pressure now on account of the pandemic because there are labor issues, there are bandwidth issues, there are capacity issues. And, when we can have these better tools from technology, we can get insight into things like process performance, forward market dynamics, which are tremendously valuable. And they help us make more nuanced decisions and better support our goals. And that holds for businesses and market actors. It holds for policymakers and consumers. So, we're seeing more uptake, more adoption today, a lot of excitement, and that's fantastic because, going back to the theme of why we're here today on this panel, sustainability and inclusivity, some very basic changes like allowing certain customs protocols to support direct electronic submissions can be game changers for small struggling businesses. It may sound trivial, but if you don't have to pay an intermediary, everything moves faster, smaller volumes work, slimmer margins work, and that's very enfranchising. And that's one of the gifts that technology can give us in the trade space.
Thank you so much, Eva. And Singyo, we'll go to you to hear your thoughts.
If actually, I echo a lot of the views of my fellow panelists, Christian, Abba, and Deepak. And if we really think about it, traditionally, even before COVID, TradeTech is already there. Just that it's a part of this big, huge topic of what the policymakers say term as trade facilitation. But actually, this COVID has helped to elevate the importance of TradeTech actually within the context of trade facilitation. And during my work, I also realized that the key difference between COVID and no COVID is that with COVID, a positive part of COVID is that it made our work easier to sell because no longer we need to do the hard persuading part because businesses realize that, hey, guys, now TradeTech is not about getting ahead of others, but basically it's survival. And that really helped us to push forward the ability to execute many of the trade digitalization efforts that we have failed or it was very challenging to execute in the past.
Great. Thank you so much, Neil. I 120% agree. I always say, when it comes to trade tech, before it was nice to have, now it's a must to have. I totally agree. It's really the mentality shift. As you said, it makes our job easier. So thank you for bringing it up. Okay, great. So I guess we're done, right? The panel is over. The trade shift is all going well. There's everyone's bought in, and I guess we can end this early. But unfortunately, that's not the case, right? Still lots of challenges, and I'll start with the private sector. With Deepak, back to you again. Any what are some even knowing this, improved environment? What are some blockers and challenges you see, and what you wish to see that can be done different?
Yeah, I would classify them into two sets. One, of course, is not a challenge, but it's a paradigm shift when you introduce new technology into an industry that's been doing a certain thing in a certain way for decades. So there is, of course, pushback from the people who are expected to do it. So there is a level of challenge over there. And like others said, the pandemic has forced people to accept new ways of doing things. So in a way that has helped, but that is a challenge. The other one is I'll be frank, is the governmental challenge. Yeah, for example, one of the things we have introduced is IoT devices for our customers. So where we use those to monitor and provide visibility of cargo as it moves from point A to point B. Now, one of the simple challenges that we have is that when you ship a bunch of IoT devices, let's say to a particular country, there are customs involved. And sometimes the devices get stuck in customs for up to a week before they're released. In some cases, countries want us to pay the duties, the custom charges at the point of entry, and then we have to apply for a refund since the IoT devices leave the country. So those bureaucratic challenges are the ones that make it harder. As it is, we've got users who are not very comfortable using newer technology, and then you have this bureaucracy that tends to create more delays and so on. So it just gives them another reason not to use it. And I think I've discussed this with you, Jiang, as well as others, that we really need to address this. In certain countries, it's very easy. It's not a problem, but in many it is. If we can bring our bureaucracy to actually come to the same level as where the industry is, where they understand what an IoT device is, they understand what's involved and the importance of time and so on. Because you have shipments waiting to leave port, and until the IoT device shows up, we can't actually let it go because we need the visibility and tracking. And customers have come to accept that now. It's no longer a nice to have, it's becoming a must have. We have customers today who insist that they have that level of visibility. So that's one big challenge from my perspective that we need to, that governments and organizations like WTO and others can help us address, so that we have more easier experience, a better experience in moving these things from point A to point B. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepak. I definitely remember we discussing this. And so two things. One, I think you also mentioned before, the IoT device, the battery lasts, anywhere between 20 to 30 days, or maybe a bit longer. But because of the delay, the battery runs out, you lose track of the IoT device, and the IoT device becomes part of e-waste. So there's very much a sustainability play there. And just back to the IoT device, in our report last year, of all the technologies we surveyed, IoT was ranked #1 in terms of most impact for global trade. So very, very important and great example. Thank you so much, Deepak. Christian, what have you seen from working with your clients on global trade?
So I think, you just mentioned customs, Deepak, and sitting here in the UK, just driving from Notting Hill to Mayfair and seeing hour-long lines outside gas stations, sort of highlights just massively, for instance, some of the customs problems we're seeing. Most of the challenges that are with customs right now could be solved with tech, but we haven't really seen adoption. I think where we have seen adoption, and I think it's quite interesting, we mentioned IoT, right? But there's a very low tech, if you want, piece of trade tech that has gotten universal adoption during the pandemic, and that's QR codes. QR codes was very, very common in most of Asia, but was not at all deployed in the West at very large scale. And today we see them as getting to be default on pretty much all transactions, to the point where you can link an invoice to a freight or shipment notice all the way down. And I think those are some of the things that's changing rapidly. Now, I think overall, what's a little scary right now is that a lot of the challenges there's just, and just to give people context, through all of 2021 and even last year, late last year, orders was massively outpacing invoices, which means that companies was putting a lot of orders for stuff, but it was not getting delivered fast enough, right? And what we saw on top of that was government reactions to that, right? You have, of course, first on during the pandemic, you had the issues with PPE. So government stepped in and started essentially nationalizing supply, saying you can't send this out of the country before we have it, and so on. What's worrisome is we're now starting to see similar patterns, for instance, around semiconductors and other areas, right? And this actually takes away the global system's ability to coordinate. There was a very, very fine-tuned system that had the ability to let sort of supply meet demand seamlessly. And I know that individual governments think they're optimizing maybe for a situation in their country, but what's actually happening is we are sub-optimizing for the whole global system. And that, I'm quite worried about that. And you know, I think globally, we have over the last many years, 2008 and during the pandemic, we learned to deal with demand shocks by printing more money, right? That's been working quite well. I mean, to be honest, right? But what I don't think the system is geared very well for is supply shocks. And supply shocks you can't just solve by printing more money. It doesn't help. In fact, it exacerbates the problem, right? And so here I think one of the things that we really got to be very careful with is how can the global system coordinate, and how can we let the technology actors, the marketplace providers, and logistic companies and everybody else sort of do what they're very well positioned to do. And I think you know, I'm very nervous about what started out as just adjustments during a pandemic becomes the norm, where we see governments trying to regulate categories and exports and tune that much more finely, because I don't think honestly they have the prediction power to foresee what that means, right? I mean, and again, just I'll finalize. I don't to be quick here, right? I'm sitting in a country right now where a fast food chain, had to close 15 stores in London because they couldn't get enough chicken. And chicken is, after all, one of the probably easiest things in the world to produce. And so the fact that we're in that situation is just staggering. And you know, to give you a point of how hard this is, this country had 4 years to prepare for that. We had 4 years to prepare for the situations that would occur, and it was not able to prevent it happening, right? So if we spend 4 years and cannot prevent a supply shock in chicken, then I think we should be very, very careful with any intervention.
Absolutely, I think the supply shock point is super important, and a topic, you know, not very folks have focused on before. So thank you, Christian. Yep. Eva, from your perspective, especially as a promising startup, what are some challenges you see?
Yeah. I'd say the challenges that I see are inspired by exactly those kind of observations that Christian is talking about. You know, every time it's smooth sailing, people talk about it being a new paradigm, right? But it never is. That's an anomaly. You know, if you look throughout history, most of humanity exists in times of chaos. And so we need tools to navigate that. And in our space, you know, Dore we've crafted our own tech, our own platform to be incredibly flexible. You know, we're used in everything from managing textile supply chains to managing raw materials and natural resources trading to, you know, in a pinch last year, we were being used to manage hospital bed capacity and hemodialysis kit capacity in hospitals because they didn't have time to reconfigure their own systems, but they could take ours off the shelf and have it up and running in a day. But all the flexibility in the world that we can build into our tool exists as an island. And what we need to take the entire space to the next level is standardization and harmonization, both on a policy level, going back to kind of what Signon was talking about, and on a technical level. So that unfolds into many, many work streams. And it's everything from looking at, you know, the standardization efforts that have been underway for decades at, say, the World Customs Organization or UNCTAD, and all of these, you know, observations and work that's been done on trying to harmonize the type of data that's required as traders cross international borders. That needs to keep going. And it also needs to be taken to the next level in things like the legal issues that surround digital originals. And if you can't have digital originals, going back to Deepak's point, there's still going to be a guy waiting for his piece of paper, and he's not going to move till he's got his piece of paper. And then that gets to technological interoperability, because it's great if you get a whole cluster of counterparties using Dore, using TradeShift, using whatever. But what we need is system interoperability and the data standards to facilitate that. And all these things, they're underway, right? There's a work going on in the W3C standards. There's the ICC is doing a lot of valuable work on digital identity as well. And the pandemic has been great to bring the benefits of TradeTech into focus, but it's also making the work a little bit harder, because all of these are human issues, right? So it takes cooperation, and it's a lot easier to push these big, complex, collaborative projects forward if you can get folks in a room, they get to know each other, they trust each other, they understand each other's sensitivities and modus operandi. So big challenges, to take it all to the next level.
And as you said, it's probably easier if you do that in person, right? So it just, especially when it comes to some of those more tough or sensitive conversations. So thank you. I love your point about standard and harmonization on both the tech and policy side and interoperability, which is something as we've been working on for a while now. So thank you for bringing that up. Xing-Yong, any thoughts on challenges or solutions? It's up to you. So you're the government. You have the power to do that. Please.
Please let me qualify a little bit. Although I work for the government now, I spent more than 2 decades of my career in the private sector. Just that now, after joining the government, I have I'm in the fortunate position actually to look at things from both sides of the same coin. And if I can borrow what we are here for today, actually is about TradeTech, right? TradeTech is actually made out of 2 words, trade and tech. So we have learned that any solution to trade digitalization, or most of the solution to trade digitalization, it's not really a pure technical solution. And so far, those workable solutions that we have come across need to be an embodiment of business needs, standardization, law, and technology. And Christian mentioned about, each country doing things on their own, make it sub-optimized across a global scale. Actually, if you think about it, it also happened at the company level. And we really, sometimes if you really take a step back and think about it, the main reason why we still need paper is because trade typically involves many parties exchanging lots of information, using more often than not silo systems that are not integrated with one another. And because these silo systems are not easily integrated, paper then is the common denominator to carry information and data. And of course, Iba also talked about the digital original, which I can talk to you about half day about digital original, especially those relating to document of title, which is notoriously very hard to digitize. So different organizations have different level of digital capabilities and have different priorities in building respective IT infrastructure. That is the legacy issue that Christian talked about. With individual organizations then working in silos, trying to solve their own problem, of course, obviously, the result is lack of interoperability within organizations. And there isn't any one common standard, but there are too many standards out there for them to choose from and for them to work together. Plus, it is extremely costly for this company to integrate many of these silo systems at scale without a new way of doing such an integration. That actually leads us to this notion about interoperability.
Actually, Sinyo, if we can just stay with you, we can move to the next topic, which is solutions. I think you already touched on some of them just now. Love to hear, yeah, what are some solutions you see, I know, Singapore has been a leader in this space. I know TradeTrust under IMDA has just done phenomenally, I think recently a transaction with Australia on different systems. Yeah, I'd love to hear from your perspective, what are some solutions that either you have implemented or you wish to see more around the world?
Obviously, we wish to see more around the world. And the way we approach this topic of trade digitalization is a more inclusive one. We are not building a platform that tries to link everyone together. We are just developing a common language that all the different silos, digital system can talk to one another. In fact, we are doing two things for TradeTrust. Firstly, in trade, there are lots of normal documents such as invoices, purchase order, certificate of origin, you name it. This type of document really are not difficult to digitize. And we don't stop there. So we come up with this framework and a common protocol that allow trade players, no matter how they obtain a document, no matter how many hands it has passed through before, that a recipient can really be certain that this particular document that he received hadn't been tampered with since it was created. Of course, trade players also need to be assured who really issued that document in the first place. This is where digital originals comes in. And secondly, the most important part of our work is the ability to digitize a class of document which we call transferable documents, such as bill of lading, because this is a special paper document that require someone to possess in order for it to claim the rights that are represented by this piece of paper. And we all know that paper bills of lading or any title document are very slow to transport among the different trade players, and it necessitates risky practices. For example, the use of letter of indemnity. So on top of authenticity and source of document, we use technology to effect title transfer electronically in full compliance to the requirement of the law. So as everyone knows that recently Singapore has enacted MLETR. We see this as a part that we can play to contribute to the interoperability, the harmonization of global trade.
Thank you so much, Neil. I know TradeTrust has just been a tremendous success so far. I really wish it will continue to grow. We'll go reverse order. I'll go Eva, Christian, and Deepak. Eva, yeah, any solutions you either currently implementing or like to see more, please?
Yeah, well.
Oh, sorry. Just before that, we'll move to the Q&A session next. So folks, please, if you have any questions for this amazing panel, please enter in the WTO PF21's platform. Yeah, sorry, Eva, back to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't see any one area that's a silver bullet, because I do think it's quite a complex web of issues that we need to be advancing. Yeah. And there are work streams underway for most of them. It's like we're in that blooming of many flowers. There's new technology, there are new reactions to technology, like Deepak was talking about. People decide to charge duty on your IoT devices, or data localization rules. And, I think in one of the earlier sessions today, there was a lot of debate around that, which is very important, because that's a big barrier to technology being adopted across those borders. So, at the end, I think it's about continuing the work streams that are underway and trying to bring order to the chaos. And that's, again, kind of hitting on the two prongs I see are the technology barriers, which is mainly about setting standards for interoperability, and then the policy barriers. It's continuing the work on, look how much friction there is between countries that have adopted the World customs organization data model versus those that haven't? Why do I need 6 different phyto certificates for one cargo that's, got to go and be break bulk somewhere? So continuing that work and pushing and nudging things to the next level.
Oh, you're muted.
I'm muted. Yeah, Christian, please. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, actually, ironically, seeing I have the opposite experience. I spent 10 years in government building standardization for this field. I know you in Singapore are using PEPL. I was pretty much part of the founding team for PEPL and Universal Business Language. So I think actually a lot of the standardization already exists in this space, and I think we got to be very careful. Just with my experience within the European Union, but also outside of standardization, I think we got to be a little careful of, as you said, let's get standardization organizations and government involved in creating the language to talk between these systems. But I think, standardization has moved a lot in the sense that 10, 15 years ago, we had to sort of standardize protocols, documents, everything between systems. But in the world we're living in today, we have more and more cloud systems, and cloud systems, can take care of a lot of that. So I think we got to be specifying languages more than we specify transfer protocols, for instance. We spent a lot of time 15 years ago on transfer protocols. They're pretty much irrelevant today because we can transfer in so many different ways, it doesn't matter. I think the other thing that's worth noting here is, and this is something we always said, right? There's standardization, and by that there's also government stamps of legitimacy to certain system sanction, really, if you want. But what you also need is traction, and traction comes from commercial distribution, right? We can create all the standards we want, and we can create all of the standardized solutions we want, but if there is no commercial uptake because these platforms don't bring the commercial benefits, it doesn't work. And I think that's probably where right now I see a bigger challenge, right? Like, I mean, Universal Business Language started 15 years ago. It was created originally by the inventor of XML, Mr. John Bosak. And we're seeing uptake now. Why? And all of TradeTech's core data model is GPL. We didn't try to create our own proprietary one, but we're seeing uptake now because finally the cost of cloud computing and the fact that it's free to suppliers is enabling this, right? We're also seeing right now, I mean, for 10 years, people have been trying to standardize a lot more in the procurement space, on the procurement side of the equation. But what's actually happening is that a lot of companies are moving away from classic procurement to marketplaces. And marketplaces have built-in solutions to a lot of that stuff. So I think one of the things we've got to be very careful for is standardize just enough that we can create the interoperability, but also make sure that we enable the market to move these solutions out to as many people as possible, as fast as possible. Because here's the reality, right? If it generates better margins, if it helps get stuff moving faster, it's going to get adopted a lot faster. So I think the areas where I would love to see government and standardization organizations play a much stronger role: identity. Why on earth do we not? Why are we in a world where there are governments that still haven't opened their identity services? I mean, all governments know all of the companies in their countries, typically everywhere. There's many countries where you cannot look this information up, right? And the other one is just on extending what we have from the core trade process around purchase orders, invoices, shipping notices into linking that over to the customs. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of spaces now we have a custom model that's completely incompatible with the transaction model, right? And are using different vocabularies and languages and so on. So I think stuff like there, I'm actually more concerned about that interoperability between the different standards than necessarily making a lot more standards. There's a saying in computing, whenever you have a problem, just generate another abstraction, and now you have two problems, right? And we see that a lot in TradeTech as well, I think.
Thanks so much, Christian. I think so many good points of it, especially that the market forces drive the progress is extremely important. So thank you. Deepak.
Yeah, sure. One thing that's common between what Christian, Abba, and Sin Young have said is basically integration between companies, countries, a common platform, how to move data across easily, and so on. And like Abba said, there's no silver bullet for this kind of problem because it's at the human level. Countries have to agree to let integration happen to some extent. And then, as Sin Young said, that how do you make sure digital documents are the original? How do you make sure they're safe and so on? So there's no silver bullet, obviously. It has to take time to a large extent. One of the technologies which I believe can help address many of these would be blockchain. And one of the challenges of blockchain is that everybody has to accept it. For example, in the supply chain, all the way from origin to destination, you could get every vendor to scan a QR code, and then the data would get uploaded into the blockchain, and then it continues on that level. And from a customer's perspective, instead of going to 5 different portals to find out where his shipment is, because the logistics company has their portal, the multiple vendors have their portals, he can just go to one place and get all the information he needs relating to his shipment. The challenge in blockchain is that it is not a cheap solution to implement. You have to build it. There are templates coming up now where you could sign on to that particular blockchain and use it, but then everybody needs to do it. So it's a great solution, but implementing it and getting people to actually buy into it and start using it is where the challenge continuously comes in. So again, it goes back to training and education to a very large extent, making people aware of the benefits of doing it and how it will help everybody in the long run. So that's of course important. It's like EDI. When EDI first came many years ago, a lot of hesitancy because you're letting your computer system connect to somebody else's computer system. You don't know what you're going to get out of it, what may come into your system, and so on. But today, EDI has become a trusted source of data exchange. Even there's a very old technology, and newer ones are there right now. But at least the companies trusting each other to let the computers talk to each other has come a long way. So blockchain similarly needs some more time, I believe. With more training and more education, people will start realizing advantages of it, companies and so on. And on the governmental side, I would say it will be really good if our customs of every country in the world would adopt some kind of technology so that they can actually use digital paper and so on. And most importantly, accept things like bill of lading and other critical documents electronically versus having to print 15 copies of it and giving to 16 different departments and stuff like that. So it's going to take time. The pandemic may have speeded up things, but I don't think you can still speed it up so much that overnight many of these problems disappear. So training, education, and reviewing of existing laws by all the countries so that they actually open up the doors to allow more electronic data to move back and forth without penalizing businesses and so on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Deepak. Great points, and thanks for shout out. I feel like, compared to a couple of years ago, 17, 18, there was a lot of hype around that. And, we started working on that, but there was definitely still some, uncertainty. But in the past couple of years, the hype, the froth has gone, the hype has died down, which is, I think, is really, really good thing. It's really the rubber can actually meet the road. Thank you, Deepak. Maybe so, folks, again on the call at this session, please feel free to use the WTO Public Forum 21's platform to enter your questions. I have see a couple here, but I encourage you folks to enter more. So actually, one is about technical difficulty. So in the meantime, I'll have some questions I'll ask, and while waiting for more questions. Actually, to follow what Deepak said, what are some future technologies trends that you are most excited about? Deepak already mentioned blockchain, but what about some others? I definitely have some more detailed questions, but I'll throw this general one out there, and it's really free to all panelists. Who wants to take this on first?
Do you want to go first?
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Yeah, Christian, go ahead. Yeah.
I think very quickly, right? I mean, obviously, so first off, I think to a large degree, blockchain has been a technology in search of a problem. And I think so I think we're finally starting to get to some maturity in some of the use cases. So that's exciting. But I think it's a transactional protocol, and as I said, we have many different transactional protocols. I think what is way more exciting, actually, to me, is innovation on AI for approvals and just matching, right? So today, large parts of the transactional process in trade is what you can think of as hard matching. Do this invoice match exactly this PO? Do this PO match this quote, and so on? And that's a very brittle model. One variation in one field and things break, and you have human exceptions, and things take time. And what we're seeing more and more is scenarios where we're using AI to, give very, very high confidence intervals that this is the right transactional pair without needing exact matches. And that sounds like a small thing, but that's actually a massive thing for the global transactional chain. I think the other thing that I'm personally very, very excited about, but also is going to be a necessity, and maybe I should have mentioned on the challenge side, is our current supply chain financing and working capital model in global supply chains is about to break, and it's about to break bad. For the last 100 years, the classic supply chain finance model is based on the idea that the buyer is underwriting the transaction and get the benefits of extending the working capital or pays outstanding. And unfortunately, all of the big four accounting firms has been out there saying that is not a good model, in the sense that if it walks like debt, talks like debt, it's probably debt, and large buyers should start recognizing this in their balance sheets. So this is not a tech thing, it's just an accounting thing, but that accounting thing means that in over the next 5 years, you're going to see pretty much every large corporate in the world try to move away of the classic supply chain finance model. That is going to create immense problems downstream. Now, the good news is that we're seeing more and more data-driven finance models emerge that are completely sell-side. So the buyer is essentially not involved, and that is a really good thing for many different reasons. One, it means that we can get a lot more liquidity downstream in the supply chain faster. It also means it can get to a lot smaller suppliers. Today, supply chain finance is only available to large and mid-sized suppliers. But I also do think we should really not underestimate what this means for the global trade system if supply chain finance, as we know it, starts dwindling up just because of changes in regulation and accounting.
Great, thank you so much, Chris. I have a follow-up question, but I'll ask that later. Abba, please. Yep.
Yeah. So also just on blockchain, that we do use blockchain in Dore because it's exactly that. It's a useful tool, and the robustness of the data structure is useful for its integrity, right? So we're not kind of big on the using it as a contractual mechanism or anything like that, but rather as an audit tool, which is an application for now, rather than all those great applications that are out there for some time. But also, just to jump off from what you were saying, Christian, the data analytics potential is huge, and there are applications, of course, in trade finance and all kinds of areas, because when you start creating structured data sets, you can analyze those. And this goes from everything from the kind of very sophisticated end that you're talking about, Christian, where there are finance applications, and you can be competing with the trade finance arm of Credit Suisse or whoever. It's a whole business model, right down to the simpler ones where you might have an SME who now has the ability to see a simple graph of a business process where they didn't have that capability internally before. They don't have a whole team of people doing a business process model and outlining it. But if there's a tool embedded, like we have a tool like this in Dore, in some tech that they're just using because it's good for their business, it's that commercial, sniff test that you're talking about, Christian. And then they get this analytical tool that's easy to use and say, oh, right, so why does my cargo have to go to these 3 places, on its journey? Why don't I just make a little loop here? That's going to be much more efficient. There are these technology tools that we can piggyback on the fact that we start to have well-structured data sets. And that to me is hugely exciting and opens a whole new universe for a lot of areas of business and also for policy decision makers who access that data.
Great, thank you so much, Eva. Simon, any thoughts on this, or Deepak? Yeah, please.
So Deepak or I'm speaking.
Yes, yeah, please, yeah.
So actually, to me, there are many exciting technology out there, and most often you look at reports. Yeah, you have 5G, you have IoT, you have AI, you have blockchain. But actually, in my area of work, what excites me most is this technology are the new tools that we actually can make use to solve business problem that has been there all along, but it can't be solved. And take for example, like AI. Obviously, AI is a very good tool to use, where you can actually mimic human heuristic. But one of the main challenge of using AI is about how much you trust about AI, because if you play around with machine learning or even neural network machine, you'll know that you feed the system with a problem, the system will tell you the conclusion. But you will never get to understand how the system derive the conclusion from the problem. And there's a lot of high level of trust that the human need to have on the machine. This is just an example. So I think using the right tool to solve real world business problem is something that I think we can look forward to seeing more and more. And previously, when the blockchain hype is there, any problem can be solved by using blockchain. But we now know that it's not true, because even like myself, to me, blockchain is just a tool. Is a form of distributed database, to be exact in the technical terms, that has certain attribute and characteristic. And the question is, how can we actually make use of these special attribute, sets of special attribute and characteristic to solve real world problem? And that in my view, is more important.
Thank you so much. Anything to add, Deepak?
I think everybody's covered. I agree. AI is a critical thing that we can leverage in the coming years. But it's, like I said, it's a matter of, it will take time. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. There are lots and lots of technology out there, but how to implement it, how to leverage it so that everybody uses it is going to be a critical step forward.
Great. Thank you so much. There's a question. Decentralized financing has been a hot topic recently. Asset tokenization and some discussions talking about, in the trade space, right? Tokenizing for example, the invoice or even the bills of lading, etc. What are your thoughts? Anyone? This is really open. Thoughts? Yes, Christian, please.
So I think, decentralized finance has brought in a lot of really interesting aspects. I think one thing we got to just be careful about is that in the whole financing equation, the issue is rarely supply. There is lots and lots of capitals looking for yield out there. So the decentralizing aspect, look at the old decentralized platforms like Lending Club, SoFi, etc. in consumer space. Everybody thought that crowdsourcing of the financing was going to be the most important feature. Within 24 months, most of those platforms, most of the money were from big institutionals. So crowdsourcing itself, well, that's important if you are in an area where capital is scarce. I think for trade, capital to support or provide working capital for trade financing is not scarce. In fact, it's well understood. Pension funds and others played for years. But I think it's more about actually identity that's really important here. Right? KYC is the biggest bottleneck to get finance to the smallest players. And that's an area that I think that's far more important to solve than necessarily the back end. And then I think on the whole, again, also just financing aspect, we gotta solve for, and probably prepare for some pretty big shocks to the system. I don't think technology is it's not about if it's DeFi or not. It's really just about do we have the regulatory and legal models around it that allows us to solve it.
Got it. Great points. Anyone else?
Yeah. I mean, having spent a great deal of my life in the financial industry as well as the tech sector, two main thoughts on this. There is very mature financial infrastructure and institutions in a great deal of the world. And those are entrenched for very good reasons in most cases. So sometimes there are shiny new technologies and people get excited about them, but tokenization of assets, that already exists. It's called securitization. It's not a new concept. It exists. And then things like, decentralized finance. Yeah, there are a lot of very visceral and I think entrancing aspects of that, social drivers. But we also have to think about executability. And a lot of financial institutions and the regulatory infrastructure behind them can function because of scale. So Christian mentioned, for instance, KYC. In terms of extending credit, KYC is a huge chunk of work, and so is credit analysis. And to perform a meaningful credit analysis takes quite a lot of resources. And if you don't have access to those resources because it's kind of off-grid decentralized stuff, it's going to impact your ability to do a quality credit analysis, or it will mean that a quality credit analysis is prohibitively expensive. Similarly, a KYC process, we could go, I think, for hours on this, Christian talking about access to different companies.
Yeah.
But I don't see a big explosion happening there anytime soon.
Thank you so much, Christian.
Could I just add one really sorry? Could I just add one very brief? It'd be very quick. I think the other thing we got to think about here is how mature these technologies are. Around a quarter of all cryptocurrency has gotten lost through hacking, fraud, etc. Right? I mean, this idea that people are really advocating to put large chunks of the global trade economy on this is years away from this even being close to secure enough. And I think, while there's a lot of hype, I think everyone in the crypto space needs to look themselves very hard in the eyes and say, can we really be a trusted partner when a quarter of all crypto out there has been lost to either fraud or stolen? And the more valuable stuff you put on that, right? I mean, we talk about tokenizing an invoice. Well, that's now an object for fraud, right? So you got to be very careful.
Gotcha. No, thank you so much, and I'm really glad we have this discussion. We're able to squeeze this in because it's, as you said, I feel like this is DeFi is what blockchain was, 3-4 years ago, right? And this is what actually our project, this community works on, is really not to give into the hype, but really take a realistic look at the new technologies with experts sitting here and identify what are the real use cases and what are some challenges. So we have 2 minutes left. So literally 30 seconds closing thoughts from the panelists. I'll start with Deepak and Christian and Abba and Siam. Deepak, please. Any closing thoughts?
Like I said before, the best is yet to come. We have lots of technology, lots of innovation, lots of new things in the pipeline or already out there. Just a matter of time before many of these things start getting utilized, more integration happens, more education happens, so things will only get better. And as we see most of this technology getting implemented and being leveraged and making life of customers, users much easier as we progress.
Thank you. Such a positive message. Christian?
Look, I think TradeTech is extremely exciting. And I think what's going to happen over the next 5 years is you're going to see a leveling of the playing field. You're going to see increased transparency. You're going to see access to working capital downstream in the supply chain where we weren't before. I think all of those are really, really good outcomes. We just need to not screw it up with either over-regulating or over-interventioning from the government side.
Great. Thank you, Christian. Abba?
Yeah. I mean, kind of to underscore a bit what Deepak said, I remember President Ramaphosa in the opening session today saying trade isn't an end of itself, and nor is technology. It's about improving lives. And we're seeing a lot of that front and center because of the pandemic. Christian, you mentioned the lines at the petrol stations in the UK, and you just have to think, well, we need to make the haulage sector better. We need to make people want to be out there delivering their cargoes. We need to help them. We need to streamline this. So, it's a very exciting time. It takes action by humans for humans using these tools that we have, the technology that we have to make it all happen. So it's a very exciting time.
Thank you, Eva. Sing-Yong, last words.
Just one sentence. Please come walk the journey with us.
All right. All very positive. Thank you so much for joining. Wish I had more time. And for the audience, if you're interested in TradeTech project, please reach out to me or Emmanuel, who's actually on site today. So yeah, best to come. Exciting, joining us in the journey. All very positive messages. I'm really excited. Wish I had more time to talk about DeFi tokenization, hot topic I can see. And I really appreciate all of you, panelists, for joining us, and all the participants for joining. So as all of you said, technology, it should be, it's not an end to itself. It should tech for good, right? To drive for inclusive and sustainable trade. And that's what we really hope for. And we look forward to seeing more of that in the future. So thank you so much. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.